you learn the chemistry, right? So in school, you learn the physiology, the biology of it, the anatomy, the biochemistry of the body and how those things work. But the reality is like mitochondria, for instance, that, everybody learns is the powerhouse of the cell. Well, they do so much more, their defense and all that. And that's all great, but that's still all physiology. The reality is that they're all frequency and electricity, right? And so when we really grasp that, and so it's really like, oh yeah, cool, frequency medicine, lasers. Like, no, 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 no. You're not grasping it. Like literally all of life is about the frequency and the voltage and the energy output.
Welcome to this episode of Bioenergetics Beat, where we explore the frontiers of wellness, healing, and the power of frequency-based support. I'm your guest host, Miriam, and today we're honored to be joined by someone whose work has had profound impact on the world of natural medicine. Today, we are joined by Dr. Martin Hart, a pioneer voice in natural healthcare who has dedicated his life to helping those often overlooked by conventional medicine. Known for his work with individuals often labeled as medical refugees, Dr. Hart has become a beacon of hope for people who've gone from practitioner to practitioner, searching for answers, and finally finding one with him. He is a licensed chiropractic physician, the clinical director of Keystone Total Health, and the board director of the CPK Association. His expertise spans kinesiology, detoxification, acupuncture, methylation, positive psychology, and a wide range of holistic practices. Today, we'll be diving into two of his specialties, kinesiology and frequency medicine, both powerful tools that offer insight into the body's communication systems and potentials for self-healing. And today, I'm also thrilled to share that joining us in this conversation is Nicole Sullivan, the president of We Are Nikki. When I told Nicole about Dr. Hart and everything he's doing to support those with complex health journeys, she was genuinely excited to be part of this discussion. Nicole's passion for integrative wellness and her commitment to empowering both practitioners and patients make her the perfect voice to join in this episode. So whether you're navigating chronic illness, passionate about natural medicine, or just curious about what's possible when you support the body's innate intelligence, you're in the right place. Dr. Hart, it's an honor to have you with us today. Welcome to Bioenergetics Beat. And Nicole, I'm so glad you're here as well. Thank you for joining this conversation. I know it's going to be a powerful one. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Hart.
Yeah. So my own background as a kiddo, learning disabilities, diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, had what retroactively would have been PANS pandas, which is like a strep and infection onset of OCD. So I was a really odd kid, struggled a lot in my youth. And we went to chiropractors, acupuncturists, along with the pediatrician. And so, one day I'd be getting acupuncture needles, and fortunately, but the next day I might be getting a vaccine needle, right? And so mix of both worlds. But as I got older, got really into exercise science, sports. My dad was teaching me how to weight lift, and I got mono, and it knocked me out for, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, right at the start of one of my track seasons, where I was projected to be the youngest starter on the team for the shot put. And so that really stressed me out. I'm like, very achievement oriented. Like, I can't miss all the season. The coach actually made me go home because I kept trying to show up to practice with mono. And so my dad's like, well, let's start. Like, my MD was just like, well, go home and rest. And so my dad's like, well, let's give you some supplements. He's like, we got vitamin C in the cupboard. We got this, we got that. Let's try some things. He's like, I looked up this and it helped. It made me feel better. Right. And so that was amazing. And then afterwards, I kept taking some of them because I kept feeling better, made me perform better. And then I kind of thought, I'm going to go to school to be like a rehab sports medicine guy. And God had totally different plans, blew that up for me. And so I, at that point, mostly recovered from my learning disabilities through some great guidance. And like I said, acupuncture, my mom always took us to the chiro and acupuncturist, and my dad helping with supplements and exercise, and some great tutors along the way, really recovered. And then I got to chiropractic school to do the sports medicine and rehab. And halfway through, I was like, this is nuts. These people are talking all sorts of crazy stuff. about helping people through touch and like, using these things to cure other issues, herbs. And I was like, no, I need to go to PT school. I want to do the sports medicine thing. And God was kind of working on me. And so I was working with these rehab guys while I was trying to transition to PT school. And um, they were showing me muscle testing, kinesiology. And I was like, okay, they were using it for rehab. And so I started backtracking. Where did they learn it from? And then where did they learn it from? Eventually, I ran into my mentor. His name is Dr. Milton Dowdy, and very high edge in kinesiology and frequency medicine. And so somebody said, look, he's got a weekend seminar. It's $150. No sweat if you don't like it. It's an expensive dinner versus some of the other courses you're thinking of taking. So I said, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to jump in for 30 days. If it's everything they say it is, great. And if not, I'm out. So during that 30-day time span, I'm learning. I took the seminar. I'm practicing the methods. My wife's back goes out, which it does once a month at that time. And so we ran an in-home daycare. That's how she helped provide for us while I was in school. And I adjusted her like I did chiropractic style, and it didn't work. And it was getting worse. And I was having to carry her to the bathroom. I was like, we got to take you to the ER. She's like, we can't afford for us to go to the ER. You'll figure it out. And in the meantime, I'm having to stay home from classes because she can't watch these kiddos. So I got my chiropractic table in the living room. I'm working on it throughout the day, playing with these kids, right? Skipping class. And so finally I called my mentor. At the time, he wasn't yet. But as I said, hey, I don't know what else to do. I've tried all my normal chiro stuff. He goes, oh, that sounds like a little torque in her dura mater, the spinal cord. Treat these two reflex points, a little bit of this frequency. She'll be fine. And so he's like, call me later, and hung up. And I did. And within 30 minutes, she could walk again. By the end of that, I could go to my next round of classes. She was fine. She's like, I don't care what else you do. This is what you're doing. We're done with the sports medicine thing. You're it. And so dove into the world of frequency medicine and kinesiology. And here I am.
Haven't looked back.
No.
I love this. I love this so much. I love this because we hear all the time about the body's innate healing ability. And it is also a matter of how do we talk to the body and how do we
Yeah.
listen, right? So sometimes we're not asking the right question. We're just like fix, 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 fix. And it's like, but wait, what if it isn't a fix? What if it's a listen? What if it's like the
Yes.
body has to say this? Or how many times, I don't know if you found this, Dr. Hart, where somebody says, oh, I'm having a shoulder issue, but it's actually coming from behind their knee. And you're
Yep.
like, no, it's here. Like you have to work on this spot or whatever. And so I just love that that you were both able to listen and that you were open to having this pivot.
Yes. Well,
That's
sometimes I had to be hit over the head with it, right, to make the pivot. It had to hit me a couple of times. In between there was a lot of time of like, I'm dragging the whole family down to this PT school in Florida. We were in Kansas. My wife's like, well, okay. And so and it's and so but be doing my best to hear it and move. But you're so right. It's what you're only one of my mentors said, you're only as good as the question you can ask the body.
wow. Wow. It's interesting just listening to your story because when I started here, I had no intention of working here at all. I was a travel agent and I used to book their travel and then COVID hit and that thing shut down. And I remember I have a chronic illness and I remember starting here and Steven's talking about the lights and the frequencies and this, and I'm like, these people are crazy. Like,
Yes.
what have I got
Yes.
into? And then all of a sudden it was after being sick for like five years and it was really rough. And then all of a sudden I was sleeping at night. And then all of a sudden my doctors are calling because I didn't fill my pain prescriptions because I didn't have any pain. And I was like, oh, there's something to the craziness. Cause I was like,
Oh, yes.
I'll give them 3 months type of thing. And yeah, 4.5 years later, I'm still here.
Never quite left. Yes.
Oh, yeah, and it's just like it just shows that there's always a different plan where I was like, I lost the career, I'm going to be a bookkeeper, and then now I'm like now I'm here and I've learned so much and I've what I really learned is there's a whole other world outside of the conventional medicine and that whole other world outside of that really helps and
Yes.
really does a lot. And so, in the journey that you've taken, what were some things that were very, with the exception of your wife, because that's pretty eye opening as well, but has there been other scenarios where you were like, wow, like this, I didn't expect this to go the way it has gone? Do you have a,
Yeah, so for sure, like one of them was really the like mitochondrial testing and how you learn the chemistry, right? So in school you learn the physiology, the biology of it, the anatomy, the biochemistry of the body and how those things work. But the reality is like mitochondria, for instance, that everybody learns is the powerhouse of the cell. Well, they do so much more, their defense and all that, and that's all great, but that's still all physiology. The reality is that they're all frequency and electricity, right? Like, and so when we really grasp that, and so it's really like, oh yeah, cool, frequency medicine, lasers. Like, no, 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 no. You're not grasping it. Like literally all of life is about the frequency and the voltage and the energy output. And so even, a different way of understanding chiropractic at that point is I'm not putting the joint back in. Like, yeah, is it joint looser afterwards and more mobile? For sure. But the reality is the input we're giving, if it's the right input, like you said, we're listening to the body, where is it out? And that input is really an energetic input. What we know in the research is that it literally changes the frequency and voltage of the connective tissue in that moment. It increases energy in a mitochondrial level after an adjustment. It's really a method of frequency and energy medicine to apply that hands-on therapy. And so that pivot for me, and it started really, I learned it when I was studying acupuncture, and I got to do some early laser research with some of our PT department. And so like, okay, but it wasn't holistic yet in my brain. It wasn't all connecting yet that no, 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 this is everything. It's just not a cool piece. It's the way to understand all of it. And that was one of those pivotal moments of, right? So
yeah. It's interesting because when you when you were mentioning how you're like, I'm going to work with sports medicine. And then when you go, and I go back to the introduction of everything that you encompass, it's very interesting how your path was this one path. And then now your path has branched off to like 10 other paths, which is pretty amazing.
yes.
Is there, um, when you started this journey and you were going to do sports medicine, what led you down to specialize in all your specialties that you have? Because you have quite a few, and you are known for helping the people that have, they have gone and they have spent a fortune, and then they find you. And it seems like you have a lot of complex cases.
Yes.
Did you just stumble upon that? Like,
So sort of, right? So like, but I can't tolerate being bored is a big one.
yeah,
I
I get
can't
that.
tolerate being bored. And I was quite the complex case as a kiddo, right? And so it was a problem, and I needed a lot of different people to help in different pieces. And really, I credit my mom to that because she didn't really know what she was doing. She was just being persistent. Let's try these people. Let's do this. And so it's like all these different people kind of help melding me up to help heal. But so I can grasp that concept of like nobody's really helping you all together or giving you any real answers. And so that's present for me. But then also it is a deep drive that I have for excellence that's in there, and you can't get that, you know, helping somebody improve their 40-yard dash. You can't like what I'm really wanting because it's a joke. I heard somebody say that one time later after I already pivoted my career, but it was like he had switched into away from exercise physiology and exercise science into more of a wellness model. But his point was like the gratification of helping somebody jump a quarter-inch higher is not nearly as it is as taking somebody from bedbound to living their life again.
Yes.
Right. And so that fulfillment and that connection with that person, you change that person's life forever or help them change their life forever versus like, wow, this guy can dunk the basketball a little better. Right. And so that shift was a big one for me. And it's a little bit of I'm blessed in having all those learning disabilities and OCD and the sensory processing because it forced me to think about things differently. And because my brain was always going a million miles a second, I had to organize everything. I had to learn to distill it down to its key points. So taking all those concepts like helps me because then I can distill them down into key points of the system of what's this person's complex issue, but really what's the complex process going on. It's not 10 different problems they're having, it's a process they're having So what's the dysfunctional process? And then out of the 10, 20, 100 things I've learned, how do we meld that to them and distill it? And so it's, the curses become blessings when you know how to morph them.
I think too, like it's really hard, especially when you're young, because when you were younger, like pans and panzas, really, even now, it's not really talked about. So it's really difficult. But I think God really gives those journeys, and it's what you do with that journey, right? Whereas
Yes.
you took your journey and you have turned it into something where you are now helping other people through that journey. And as someone who's going through that journey currently, it's really when a practitioner has also walked that same path, it's so much more meaningful because it's not just empty words or empty things. It's, what, when I was young, I had these struggles. You know what, here's how I took my struggles and here's how I help people. And I think that's
Yes.
amazing because, when we talk to people that have Lyme, we had somebody who worked here but never had Lyme. And, you're trying to talk to someone who's not well. And when that person doesn't understand that, I've just had my shower and now I need a nap, like they don't understand that level of
No.
fatigue. Or, I remember talking to someone, she's like, every hair on my head hurt. I'm like, oh, I know what that feels like. And so when you've had those struggles, it's amazing that you've turned what was really hard in your childhood into something amazing. And kudos to your mom, because a lot of people will just kind of stop and be like, you accept the answers. And it's like, no, like I refuse to accept these answers. And I love how you've turned what you went through as your childhood and what you're doing today, because I know you make an impact on a lot of people.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
really, really appreciate everything that you just said also. And yes, kudos to your mom, because I think persistence is the key in holistic medicine.
Yes.
For me, I find that it isn't just about the answers. It is always about the question, and I don't always know the right question to ask. And when I
Yeah.
have a practitioner that is, I'm going to say persistent, but also curious, and then like, okay, if this is happening, how did this happen? Or how did this break down? Or, okay, this is the result of, X, Y, and Z kind of thing. And I think it's really important when we look at a holistic approach for health and wellness, that people understand it is not a destination, it is a journey. There's a whole symphony happening in any one person's body, and it's like, okay, is the wind section out, is the brass section out, like what's happening here? We got to tune things. Okay, I also noticed, because I'm curious, because I also like ink, do you have a Vitruvian man on your arm?
I do.
Oh,
Yes.
Sweet.
that was
Nikki,
I was
I,
like,
yeah.
focus
Awesome.
on,
I'm here
yeah.
for that. I'm here for
Yes.
that. And is that from the aspect of like the whole, like looking at man in that way in terms of systems
Yes.
and being the, okay, I love that.
That
Love
was
that.
so. Um, Jennifer, my wife, designed a version of Vitruvian Man for my first practice logo, and so she did a generalized outline of that. So it's like the whole being, and then she
Yeah,
overlaid it with the energy centers of the body. So you can't see it very well, and the coloring, and I can't seem to get my arm the right angle, but
that's all good.
it's got all the energy centers down the middle. So it's a good reminder for me. And oh goodness, I'm a big baby when it comes to pain. And so, the tattoo, I was getting the tattoo, which I'm not sure I'll get anymore because they're not very good for you, but I do like the few I have. And so the tattoo artist was talking to me, and he's talking to me about injecting his plants with chlorophyll to defeat the fungus. And he's just jabbering, he's working. And my wife's going, you got to talk to him, start asking questions. He's like, tell him what you do. I'm like, I can't talk. I just got to focus on the pain. We'll have coffee after. Like,
But I love that. But this is the thing. I know that all three of us, just because I know Miriam and I know my own experience and what you've just shared, Dr. Hart, which I love, is that we all started out somewhere thinking our paths are going to be a something. They're going
yes,
to be a this, and that's where I'm going to arrive and it's going to happen. And then I, like you, I'm not a sometimes God takes a brick with a note attached, wham, it throws it at my head. I'm like, right, yeah, okay, I'm going over here now, because I'm not picking up on all the clues that something has to shift or change. And yet,
yes,
all of us on this call, and I know many more, have amassed a toolbox which we now use in our daily lives, whether it's at work,
yes,
whether it's our interpersonal relationships, whether it's our health, or all of it. And so I think there's something to this. So Miriam, you mentioned that Dr. Hart, in your intro, you work on a lot of what we call medical refugee cases. And I know you already mentioned Dr. Milton with the kinesiology. So talk to me about what happens in diagnosing some of these cases, or what are these tools, including the kinesiology. Like, I'm quite familiar how the body doesn't lie and the body can give information, but I don't know if everybody is familiar and how it's used diagnostically.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really great point. So kinesiology is one form of biofeedback, as we call it, right? It's a way for us to access information from the body in real time. So kinesiology would typically be doing that through the nervous system and connective tissue through the muscular system, right? We're using the neuromuscular system with manual muscle testing. And the way I explain that is it's a stimulus response. We're going to stimulate the body and then see its response with the muscle testing. So I might use frequency medicine then with, for instance, frequency samples of a bacteria to assess, is this stressing the body out? And then with the form of kinesiology that I practice and that my associates at the clinic here practice and that I learned from Dr. Milton Dowdy, who has blessed me with now asking me to be the board director for our professional association that trains people in that. And so we use a little bit deeper of not just the muscle testing kinesiology, but actually a resonance device which picks up on interferences in the resonance, so we can quickly assess, okay, yes, there's a bacteria here, but where it's stressing the body, but where is it, right? Where is it located in the body? And then maybe what's driving that even deeper. So, right, so this is the elegance of this system, is it allows us to ask very deep frequency questions. So instead of going yes or no, are you reacting to this frequency? It's a little deeper of yes or no, are you reacting to this frequency? Where are you reacting? What's out of balance to cause you to react? You don't just get Lyme, right? There's a reason your body was resonating and allowed Lyme to be present, right? So we have to figure that out. So maybe if we frequency resonate deeper, we find actually you've got a mold toxicity that's lowering your immune system. And the reason you could have a mold toxicity is actually because you got really strong leaky gut, right? And so we've got to deal with all three of those aspects, not just the Lyme. And that's one aspect we see in our practice is people chase Lyme for decades sometimes. And that's that even goes further with what I love what you guys are doing at Nikki. And I see you guys designing is like, hey, look, our Lyme program is all encompassing. We've got a mold detox. We've got to sleep with it. We're hitting all these aspects because that's the reality of what it takes in a complex organism. And so our testing is allow us to see in each different case what's driving that, right? So we had a case today, actually. One of her biggest complaints, it's still present. Everything else is doing way better, but she still has ringing in her ears. And so it still resonated a bit to Lyme. And so when we tracked it backwards, though, I was thinking, clinically, I'm going, I think it's probably heavy metals. And it was saying, no, she just has a small pocket that we've got to clear out of sinuses that are holding some infection that are just latent there. And that's the last little bit. Okay. And then from there, we can use a kinesiology and the resonance testing then to go and say, now, what does exactly the body want us to do to handle this? Right. So we call that frequency matching the remedies. So is it an herbal blend? Is it a supplement? Is it a laser treatment? And so then that allows us to actually assess not just what the problem is, but then what is the body wanting us to do about it to help correct those frequencies? What's the corrective input? What's the inverse and opposite frequency, which is so much of what you guys are doing with the Nikki watches to set that up.
This is so great. And I love this because there's so many things about this. I keep saying, I love this. I love this. I can tell you from a person who has been a patient, my number one issue is when I meet a practitioner, they have an idea in their head of what it is, but I don't fit that box. And so they go, that's it. And you just said, oh, I thought it's this, but the body, you listened and the body said, no, actually it's this, and this is how it needs to be treated. I feel that that's so many causes of many perpetual medical issues that the practitioner thinks it's this and therefore that's it. And they might even treat for that, even though the body doesn't need it. And so further complicating more gut issues, more brain fog, more, systemic yeast, systemic mold, etc., because they're constantly bombarding going, no, it's this. And so I love that kinesiology is like, no, this body, not Miriam's
Oh,
body, not
yes.
Dr.
Yeah.
Hart's body, not my body, whatever body is in front of you saying, hey, this is my inherent intelligence. This is what's happening inside me. So I think
To
that's
respect it. Yes.
so huge. It's such a huge advancement in treating people. So Nikki Wellness Technology offers game-changing support to longtime Lyme sufferers like Ellen.
Initially, probably bit in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, 1980s. And it was diagnosed 10 years later in 1996 and went through 5.5 years of antibiotic treatment. Also had Babesia and ehrlichiosis. So, which I think this is a pretty traditional story in many ways. Lots of doctors weren't treating it aggressively. I lived in southeastern Massachusetts and finished my long treatment of antibiotics in 2002. And then I think it was in 2008, I started going on about every 2 years again, having to have antibiotics. So now it's almost 5 years without them. And it feels fantastic. And I wear it about 6 hours a day. And that keeps me functioning. I've had a very busy life and loving it. It's been a game changer. And I've turned quite a few people onto it. It's just kind of made me almost forget about Lyme disease, which is pretty awesome.
Nikki Wellness Technology, delivering frequency enhanced health. We are Nikki.com. So what else do you use? I think I think when I was reading up a little bit about some of the things that happen at your clinic, there's also methylation. So some people might not know what that's for and why it's important.
Yes.
I mean, I have an idea, but I'd love to.
I had to Google how to say the word. So great question, Nikki.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd really love to get into a little bit of that because I feel like it's another piece of this puzzle that people don't understand. Like people have maybe heard of chelation and they maybe heard of some other things, like you've mentioned laser and you've mentioned some supplements, but there's a reason that methylation is such a big deal. So I'd love
Yes.
for you to expand on that.
Yeah, that's a key concept. And when I first started studying methylation, I was going back to some of the early pioneers in orthomolecular medicine and the books they wrote and trying to study it. And it was like, you know, my background is chemistry, biochemistry. You got to take all that stuff for school, right, to get your doctorate for us. And so I took all that, but as you're really getting in the nitty-gritty of methylation, there was multiple times I had to set the textbooks down and go, wow, okay, I'm a little full and I got to give this time to really coordinate. And then, I did some further trainings on it. And so methylation is really this key concept. The bare minimum of it's just adding a methyl group to other things in the body. And so that's just carbon and hydrogen. That's what methylation is. We're going to add carbon and hydrogen to a group. But what's so powerful about that is that when we do that, it makes our genetics turn on or off. It helps us detoxify. We can methylate toxins to detoxify them. It helps us make a bunch of neurotransmitters, helps us break down a bunch of neurotransmitters, including stress hormones, right? It helps us make different hormones like our thyroid hormone, helps us make tons of different chemicals, like all of the coding we need for our brain and nerves. We need to methylate to make that type of coating, that fatty acid phospholipid coating for all of our cells as well. That all requires methylation. So it's a key process that is basically adding a coating or a step into making all those things happen. And so you can have certain genetics that make you either a high or low methylator, a poor methylator, right? So for instance, genetically, I don't methylate histamine very well. So that means I'm prone to having really high histamine. Okay. And so that is very often with pandas kiddos as well. So they have histamine genetics. So I don't methylate histamine very well. So I got to kind of watch that and optimize those methylation genetics. So that's a big key piece. And so we can use the kinesiology and the biofeedback to help assess that. And then sometimes we'll do genetic testing with those folks to see what their genetics are. And then sometimes we'll do metabolite testing where we'll do like a urine test. I'll see what aren't they breaking down or what are they breaking down too quickly. So for instance, one of the other things I do very slowly, I'm a poor methylator technically, although I don't want to give myself that mental label, but I'm a slow methylator, maybe a better way to put it positively. And so like I don't break down neurotransmitters very quickly. So I'm prone to be a little go, 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 upregulated because I keep a lot of my dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. Also can make me a little anxious, right? So I got to modulate that, but I can see that after doing genetic testing and we do a urine test on me. Now it looks pretty good. But back in the day, you'd see me peeing out a bunch of partial breakdown because I'm not doing it very well. So I can use that to assess, okay, I see these on the labs. Let me mix this with the muscle testing to see what exactly they need, and then to optimize a protocol to allow them to detox better, express their genetics better, better neurotransmitters, better hormones, all of that stuff.
And this is huge because it all ties in. So I know, like with an oats test, for instance, you can get a lot of information. The organic acids test, if people aren't familiar, you can get a lot of information in those labs from the urine, like what's happening in the microbiome in terms of what's happening with the neurotransmitters, and how this is where I know people talk about leaky gut, but it's a really huge thing because it's affecting so many different parts of the systems. And so in terms of that slow methylation, wow, that's really interesting. If you could just play, with the body going, okay, what's first? So I would imagine it matters what order you do things in. So you have to
Yes.
hit this first, then this, and then that. I also find that with practitioners, when they do get, like, for instance, I had an oats test and it came back, I'm like, wow, that's a big report. There's some problems. And I was like, okay, I'm a little scared, but
Yeah.
I was reliant on my practitioner because I wasn't sure. There's a lot here. What order do we do this in?
Yeah.
Because if we do one and then we don't do the other, then that means there's going to be an over colonization of this, or how this is going to work. So
Yeah.
I think that how you're using these systems in conjunction with the kinesiology, that the tests are great information, but that's just information. It doesn't tell you how the body needs it to be attended to. So I
Yes.
think that's really, really big. It's a key component there.
Oh yeah, when I train practitioners, especially if they're going to work with us in the clinic, it's not just about what technique you're using, right? It's really one of the beauties of the developer of chiropractic, the founder of chiropractic, son, back in the 1800s. He wrote so many books. I tried to read all of his books; they were incredible. But he said, look, there's a philosophy, there's a science and art, and you have to do all three, right? And so it's key to do all three. And so what I'll say is like, look, lab testing is great, but all it's doing is laying out the map for us. It doesn't tell us how to get there. It doesn't tell us what path to take. It just lays out the map. And so then you have to use your clinical framework, which would be your philosophy, to help guide you. You got to use patient input because they're the heroes of the story. You're just Gandalf helping them out. They're the Frodo's dropping off that ring. So you got to take their feedback and what they're saying and what their goals are. And then you need a compass. And that compass is kinesiology, right? That compass says, okay, hey, we got to the tree. Are we going left or right, right? I got to this oats test, and the oats test says this, but do I go left or right now in that oats test? And so you got to have an order of operations, your clinical framework to make those decisions, and a compass to help guide what's north and south, and that's your kinesiology. And so when you can lay it out like that, yeah, we love all the functional lab testing. We do full body thermography screens
Oh,
from the
sweet.
Swiss Biological Medicine. We do that in the clinic, but it's all data. What the real question is, can you interpret the data and make it usable? And so we tell patients is like, we respect the order of operations of the body. We got to find your priorities, and they're different for everyone, right? You can get some distillation, there's some commonalities, but it's different. I might need to start with methylation for you. I might need to start with detox. Reality is, I might need to start with emotion sometimes, right? And so we got to figure that out and sort that out. And that's where kinesiology and talking to you comes into play on that front. And then once we do that, once we start to respect that order of operations and hit that priority, from there, it's about gauging how are we responding and going through the rest of the map, right? How are we gauging that? How are we using our compass and our feedback tools to gauge what's going on?
Wow.
It's phenomenal.
So yes.
It is. It's
It is,
phenomenal.
yeah, it's very fascinating. It's really interesting what you were saying too about the testing. So a couple months ago, we had one of our gentlemen who's one of our co-founders. He was doing EAV testing in the office, and it was about 2, 3 months ago. I can't quite remember. And he tested me, and he's like, "You have a bacteria infection." I'm like, "I feel fine." And like,
Yeah.
yeah, until it came full blown and I had to go to the emergency room. And because I even went to my doctor. I'm like, how do you explain to a doctor, like, I just had this EAV testing. He says I have a bacteria infection. She's like, well, we'll do blood work. And like nothing showed up. And so
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, he must have been wrong. And then it was a couple weeks later, I was at work and then it like came on like massive in like 2 hours. And then I
Yeah.
had like 7 days of like IV antibiotics and then 3 months of like antibiotics. And I was like, how did he know? Like, I need
Yeah.
that second piece of, okay, you have an infection, where? And then now
Yes.
what are we gonna do? So when you were saying
Yes.
that, I was like, I missed a step in there.
Yes. EAV testing's fantastic. And for those who don't know, it's a form of frequency testing, energetic testing, where basically you're gauging an electrical response with the device in the body. And it is very good to know what's an issue and how bad of an issue is it. There is some ways, but it is a struggle to figure out where the issues are. And then really sometimes too to decide what's the lowest common denominator to start treating with, right? So that's another aspect we try to distill down is I can have all this data, but what's the lowest common denominator to know what do I really need to focus on to drive that? And so sometimes with those forms of testing, parasites might be energetically off the chart, like body's giving you a really big electrical response. But if you start with parasite cleanses for most people, you're going to wreck them. You're going to cause so much detox, so much problems. And so, but the body's saying like, yeah, this is my biggest issue. You know, it's causing the most disruption in my system, but it's probably there for a reason. So you got to sort that out. So, but a good EAV tester, they're using this, what you're saying, and what the biofeedback the EAV is showing them, because it is a good system.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Like the first time, and I'm always like all my numbers are always like in the tank. And then it was, and so one of the things I struggle with, and a lot of people that do have illness, is you're sensitive to a lot of things. So
Yeah.
how do you proceed forward for those that have the sensitivities? Like,
Yes.
what are some things that you kind of put into play?
Yeah, I joke sometimes, technically our specialty is complex chronic illness, but I can remember I had a patient one time who was very sensitive. She was we have a full therapy unit at the clinic. So patients come and stay 3 to 5 hours a day with us, getting the hands-on treatment, the frequency medicine, the therapies. And so she was on a therapy and having a little bit of a reaction. So the staff came and got me. We got her cleaned up, no problem. I just sorted out. And she goes, I'm sorry, I'm such a hot mess. And she's like, maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I'm such a hot mess. I was like, oh, honey, like, no, hot messes, that's my specialty. We got you. Right. And
Okay,
so,
sign us up because we need to be there.
yes, I mean, they're my favorite. I joke, but it is like, and so, but it's with sensitive cases, there's two aspects. Number one, you have to ask yourself, am I starting at the right place? Right? Am I starting at the right place with treatment? Okay. Most of the time for those cases, you really need to start gentle and hands-on, maybe more frequency and informational medicine rather than a lot of herbal and functional medicine, that sort of stuff, right? So we got to coax the body and let the body know really, then this is where like you can't separate emotions from neurology, from physiology. They're all the same thing. And so really what we have to create in that moment is a sense of safety within the body, right? And so now we can do that sometimes with some good hands-on care that coaches the body like you're okay, and then we'll stress it a little, and then we'll balance it back out. And so with those sensitive cases, most of the time what I'm doing is a little stress and a rebalance, and a little stress and a rebalance, a little stress, rebalance, till suddenly they can tolerate a couple of supplements. Suddenly they can tolerate a sauna, right? And so we're doing that to create that safety and that coaxing. And a lot of those cases, we have a format that we do with patients where I say, look, here's our approach. Here's Keystone Approach with cases. When I train doctors, I say, this is your jam. This is how you know what to do. First, you triage. You got to know if there's fires that need to be put out right now. Then you support, which just means this is like mostly functional medicine. This is where you just, hey, you're low on enzymes. We're going to give you digestive enzymes. But then you got to find and correct the underlying cause. Then you got to repair the damage and retrain the body to do it on its own. But sometimes with those sensitive cases, nobody's triaging them. If they got crazy high histamine, they're going to react to a bunch of stuff. Deal with the histamine first. If they've got a bunch of limbic system impairments, meaning they're always really hypervigilant, stuck in fight or flight, we might need to triage that first and focusing on helping to lower that fight or flight before I can do any detox or kill the infections or any of that, right? So we got to triage what's up for those sensitive cases to create that safety in the body.
I love what you're talking about this. Go ahead, Miriam.
I was just gonna say, like, I'm one of those, like, we'll build a program for the Nikki, and Steven will be like, okay, we got to make sure it works and we got to test it. I'm like, give it to me. And within 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, that works. Like, I got to like rip the Nikki off and be
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
oh,
yes.
I can't
Yeah.
do it. I'm like, it works
Well,
fine.
yes. Like that's sometimes well, I think there's no accidents in the world, right? And there really is. One great book I read was called Survival of the Sickest. And it was all about genetics, but it was about how certain genetics that make us sick now actually had a really good purpose, right? And so, but each of us have a purpose. Some of the canaries in the coal mine are the ones who alert us to early danger, right? And so that's a benefit. And now you're getting to use it as an opportunity, right? Good on you.
There, Nikki.
I was going to say that I really appreciate you talking about the emotional piece of this. Often people that are chronically ill or have acute illness are told, oh, this is psychosomatic. There is a difference between psychosomatic, which is
Yeah.
I am causing this on my own, and I'm having an emotional reaction, or I have an emotional reaction as a result of whatever else, or this emotional reaction is feeding into what is happening in my body. I think it's a really important piece to talk about because people are so gaslit
Yes.
in the medical systems and with holistic practitioners. Those practitioners that are like, oh, it's this way, and they can't see the kaleidoscope turn and say, actually, wait, there might be more here. So I'd love to talk a little bit, tease out a little bit more about the emotional piece that you're kind of speaking to, just to differentiate for people that are listening, or if they've had the experience of having their emotional intelligence discounted or gaslit as a part of what they're experiencing. It's like if anybody knows what it's like to wake up every day and you're like, wow, I only have so many spoons, and to feel so frustrated that you can't do the things that you want to do or you don't understand what's happening to you, yeah, you're going to have an emotional reaction. So I'd like to pull on that thread a little bit.
For sure. With that concept, especially practitioners, so over the years, I used to run a big Lyme clinic. It'd be me and 5 doctors underneath me working. And so when I was training different doctors all those years, if they hadn't gone through their own journey, one of the things I would make them do during the training is I would make them take a massive dose of niacin. So they would have a massive niacin flush. Because if you've never had one and you don't know what happens, you're like, I got to go to the hospital. I got to get out of here. Something's not right. My skin's burning. I'm panicking. I don't know why. Right. And so I'll make them have one. I'm like, a lot of people feel this every day. And so if you've never had to live with it, I want you to experience it a while and do nothing to fix it. Right. And so they can grasp it and see, because it's a mess. And every once in a while, I feel like about every 2 years, God gives me a real nasty flu, or a few years ago it was COVID. And it's just a reminder, hey, some people wake up every day like this. Don't forget. You don't forget. Right. And so, but with the emotions piece, early on with patients and clients, what I tell them is like, I often don't even use the word emotions right away. I'll start with neurology because I don't want to trigger that same trauma that's already been triggered for them, right? And it is important to be a present resonance humility aspect of like, because you got to watch for them and you don't want to trigger that same thing that somebody else has triggered. But the reality is like, look, your system has an intelligence where it's trying to survive and thrive. And at times it's trying to give you messages, right? So those body sensations, those symptoms, those emotions are all messages. Now, how loudly it feels like it has to shout at you is how big or distressing those things are going to be. And so, and it's important to recognize in that this whole concept is unconscious. Your nervous system is generating these most of the time without you, before you're even conscious of it. It's before you stop to have what we call metacognition, where you stop to be able to analyze your thoughts. By the time you see your thoughts, they've already been thunk, right? To use appropriate grammar. They're output. They're secondary. They've already happened. They're a consequence, right? Now we'll get feedback from those and reinforcing. So a negative thought loop can reinforce a negative thought loop, but you got to realize a negative thought loop or a stress response is an output. Okay. Now, the second concept is called the concept of the second dart. We get hit with the first dart, which is a stress response, and then we start panicking about the stress response and we stab ourselves with the second dart. The key is twofold. First, stop stabbing yourself with the second dart. Okay. And so that looks like for these patients who are having an emotional reaction, a strong reaction, really what happens most of the time is they're having a symptom that's distressing, and then they're having emotions about the symptom, right? And that's when people start to blame them. But if you took away the second dart, they're not automatically better, right? They're just not stressing as much about the first symptom, but they're still having it. So, like, if somebody's starting to have low blood pressure, they're afraid they're going to pass out. So they're going to start to panic more because they feel bad, which then exacerbates the first response and they pass out. And then it becomes a trauma loop now. I don't want to pass out. So they create more stress. But just taking away the second stressor doesn't fix the initial low blood pressure, right? So one of the things I kind of teach that concept to them, like, yes, we need to get rid of the second dart so we don't reinforce what we call perpetuate or create a bottleneck in treatment. We got to remove these bottlenecks. And a strong emotional response, a strong stress response, trauma, PTSD, limbic system work, those are all bottlenecks that sometimes inhibit, slow down, or prevent recovery. We call them bottlenecks or perpetuating factors. So we got to deal with that. And then we can deal with that first stress response and help you. I really like this concept. I did some training in DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, and they call it distress tolerance, right? We want to help patients develop some distress tolerance so when symptoms show up, it doesn't automatically trigger an alarm stage in their nervous system. And again, it's not a choice. The nervous system's already doing it to try to protect you, right? So this is where you're talking about like psychosomatic. I'm like, no, this is a nervous system response. We have to retrain your nervous system. The nervous system is outputting emotions, right? And so that can go back to the core of who you are and all of that too, that we, at some point when we get through enough emotional training, what I tell patients is like, look, when we get into what I call the inner work, there's 3 layers. There's nervous system retraining and regulation. Okay, that's kind of like limbic system work. Then there's emotional regulation and emotional training. I'm teaching you to be emotionally literate, how to regulate your emotions, how to maybe deal with some traumas. But the third piece that's part of that, that is how we get to the place of really thriving, is figuring out who you are, what do you value, what makes a meaningful life for you, right? And then what's your purpose? And that's how we go from just trying to deal with the regulation of the nervous system to like really thriving. And when you're just telling somebody it's psychosomatic, hey, this is all in your head, what do you want them to do with that information? Okay, great, thanks, I appreciate it. I'm all better now. No, it makes it worse, right? That drives me nuts. I'm like, fire that guy. Let's find you someone else. Okay. And so instead, if somebody's having a stress response to their illness, or their stress response is perpetuating their illness, or they're having a CPTSD response, I don't care. It's part of the picture. Like you said earlier, we're going to, like kinesiology, we're going to, not your body, not, but whatever body's right here. The phrase line I use with other doctors is like, you treat what shows up on the table. You're not like, oh, I wish they would do this so we could do that. No, this is what shows up on the table. This is what you deal with. If they're having a stress response, this is part of their picture. We got to deal with it. It is not a side note. It's part of what they have going on. It's the whole thing. This is not preventing you from treating Lyme. This is part of their case, and Lyme is part of it, and the stress response and their stuck emotions and trapped emotions are part of it. So we're going to work with that too.
Yeah, that emotional response. First of all, Nikki and I, like, I'm trying not to cry because I am like, you're going through it, and I'm like, well, my response is denial. Like,
Sure.
my big thing, like, I remember once I was very prone to bowel obstructions. I had 18 in 4 years, and I remember I woke up and I'm like, I knew I had one. I still went to work, got off at the hospital. I know, and I'm like, no, I'm just going to go back home. So I go home and I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I have bowel obstruction. And my sister's like, I'm going to take you to the hospital. But I was trying to convince myself it was a cold. Like, it's the flu.
Yes.
And even though I knew, and I get there and the nurse is like, I tell the nurse, I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a bowel obstruction, but I'm hoping for the flu. And she's
Yes.
like, when did this come on? I was like, well, I went to work, but I wasn't at the vomiting stage. So I'm like, I'm good. And she's just like, then that's when she told me like how bad, how dangerous it really is. And then
Yes.
each time one would come up, I'm like, and even this last time when I had the infection, I'm like, I knew I had to go to the hospital, but I'm like, nope, I still went home. Complete denial, complete denial.
Yes.
And so and it's hard because I think as you go through illness, you often don't deal with, you don't realize the PTSD you get from it. And then all of the journeys, and then everyone trying that aren't professionals trying to self-diagnose you, and it's this and it's that, and it's, it's so much. And so then a lot of the time, like you stop sharing, like, I'm not well type of situations. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very big component of when you're not well is like the emotion. And like just listening, Dr. Hart, like, I know I felt seen. I know Nikki felt seen because we've all dealt with that. And I know people listening will felt seen. And Nikki's like texting, she's like, this is so good. I'm like, I'm trying not to cry. Like, it was because everything that you said really spoke to me, because you are used to not hearing that. You know what, your anger is, yeah, it's legit. Yeah, you have a right. Like, now you have to deal with, like, you're getting better here, but we now need to deal with, like, every time you get a new pain, it may not be what you think it is and stuff like that. So yeah, that was
The
very,
big one. A lot of our patients, well, the staff will joke, our office manager joke, and Jennifer will say, because the patient will come out all crying out of the office, and they say, it's okay. You're not a real patient till you cry on the table. Like, it's okay.
I
But
love this.
I love
yeah,
that.
It's
Yeah.
it's so
oh yeah,
huge. It's so huge because yeah, like so literally texting Miriam going, "Oh my God, this is such a good explanation. I'm so grateful." Okay, like first question, can you come to Victoria?
Yeah.
Like please,
We're both
please
ready
and
to book
thank you.
flights.
But
oh yeah,
aside from that, I appreciate Miriam that you sharing that you have like a denial response. I have a panic response.
Oh,
I have a panic, and I also have what I call my Wonder Woman response. Somebody's like, "Oh, this is happening." I'm like, "I'll show you." Okay, this is going to happen. And then I
yeah,
get into more stuff because I just barrel through. Or people say, "How do you get up every day?" I'm like, "Stop asking me that. Ask me why it's hard to get up." Because
yes,
let me tell you, like, just like I'm stubborn. So it's like to acknowledge people. I mean, I've said this so many times. People at the end of the day, just being a human being, we all want to belong. We all want to be acknowledged. We all want to feel accepted. These are all basic things. And I feel like when you work with a practitioner, holistic or otherwise, who can't accept, like you say, with your three-prong approach, with the compass and the guide and all the things that you do, they can't accept those aspects of you because I am one person. I am not just my emotions. I am not just the thing that is happening right now in my body. I am more than that. And so I am the sum total of all of those things plus plus. And so when we isolate and we say, oh, it's just this or it's just that, I feel like it's such a misnomer, and it really leaves people in a cycle where they cannot heal, and they don't, and the body doesn't understand. Like it's kind of stuck, and it's like it's going on this loop, but it can't
yes,
quite snap out of that loop and go, oh, I have to build this bridge here so that I can complete a full rotation or whatever it is. I mean, it's just an
yes,
example. So I'm so grateful for you sharing those aspects of that and sharing about how you have a multidisciplinary approach, which is inclusive of what your patient is saying verbally as well as kinesthetically. Like there is something to be said for I'm saying this out of my mouth and my body's like, hey, actually, can we look over here?
oh yeah,
Because I might not be aware that my body is saying that. I just know that this hurts or I don't feel good or
yes,
you know, that kind of thing. So I feel that it's so important sharing your process with people, and that it's okay to feel and say and do all the things and react.
yes,
Reaction, I believe you use the word consequence, same idea, is that we're going to have a reaction in treatment,
yes,
whether it's emotional, physical, psychological. We're going to have a reaction from whatever has happened to us. And I think that's important for people to hear as well, that it's normal, like to normalize that it's not that you're creating a neutral situation, you're purposely creating a reaction.
yes. You need the body to respond somehow. And the key is not that you don't have reactions. It's just that how are we going to respond when you do, right? And how are you going to respond? How am I going to respond? And so that we use that reaction to create the next jumping board, right? How do we create that next setup? And actually, that's a funny concept. You brought up the cycle and the spin. And so like the big concept to me is like this is the beauty of Chinese medicine that really helped me in like systems thinking concept is how the interweb or the patterns, and it's the pattern, right? This gets into some crazy levels of like Alfred North Whitehead philosophy stuff and whatever, but it's like it's not linear concepts. Everything in this moment in reality in the universe is what creates the next one, right? And so if you're just looking at the one thing in the pattern, you're not going to make enough change to change the entire pattern. So you got to look at all the key points in the pattern that you change it that allow the next entire gestalt moment to change, right? And so that's what, so you guys are going to be at our CPK, the association that teaches this method, our big symposium in the fall. And the lecture I'm going to give in there is breaking the complex chronic illness cycle. How do we break that cycle, right? Not even, the concept is it's beyond even the root cause, right? I'm a little bit beyond treating the root cause at this point of I want to break the cycle for you, right? So what sets you up for it? What fed the cycle to begin with? What triggered the cycle to go on? Now that it's going on, what's driving it? And then after it's being driven, what's keeping it stuck? What's allowing it to not to break? And then what's the further consequences of that cycle that once a cycle started, it's creating all these ripple effects. So that creates so much momentum that it's difficult to break the cycle. That's why when somebody's on year 20 of treating Lyme, you can't just keep treating Lyme because you're not going to be able to reverse the momentum of that cycle. We've got to break the cycle at all the points, right? So that's one lecture I'm going to give on that of how do we identify the points in the cycle, and then what are we going to do philosophically, scientifically, and artfully in order to break that cycle with our clients and patients. And so that's a key piece there for us to think about. I love the way you put that.
So
I appreciate what you, sorry, Miriam, because I was like, wait a minute, I really appreciate what you just said, because that is why, to me, what you just said, first of all, I can't wait to hear that lecture. The second thing is, I feel it is so, so important what you just said, why you have to use multi tools to diagnose, because a blood test, a thermography screening, an oats test, that is literally a photograph at that moment in time of what
Yes.
is happening within the systems, and why it's so important to talk to the body to say, hey, we got this bit of data, like you said, just this snapshot of this very particular moment in time. Now what? And is that snapshot still true?
Right. Oh yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's why you can't treat off of old labs, unfortunately, give you an idea
Yeah.
what was going on, but
Yeah.
because it'll be drastically different. One thing we do is no matter what the test is, we like to do a little bit of provocation to try to create a reactive or stress state. So we'll have them do an hour and a half massage before their blood labs or their urine lab or a sauna. Not many of our patients can go vigorously exercise before they come see us, but if they can, we could have them vigorously exercise, but something to create a stressor in the body. So what the labs show me is a stress state. And even our thermography screen, the way we do the thermography is we do a pre-stress reading after they've been sitting calmly for 10 minutes.
Nice.
And then we do a post-stress reading, which is after they have to stand there cold for 10 minutes, right? And so we can see, how are you at rest? How are you under a stress state? And what's the change, right?
Love it. Love
Some
this so
patients
much.
look amazing pre-stress. Most of our patients don't, because that's not who we get. But some do look really good pre-stress. But you apply that stress and they totally crashed out. And those are the people who go, but you look good. You know, but you look good.
Right?
I
I love
I
this.
one of my doctors is like that. So I have Crohn's disease, and he's like, your blood works are normal, everything's normal, everything's fine. But I'm like, I'm feeling horrible. So I remember I was having like the worst Crohn's attack, like the kind of attack that you forgot how bad it used to be. That
Yes.
day, I'm like, I am going to get my blood work. And then he got it. And he's like, what is going on? And I'm like, now you're listening. So, now I'm no longer crazy that having that stressor and getting your blood work proved my point to him 2 years
Oh,
ago.
yes.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I know we're almost out of time. This has been such a good conversation, but I do want to quickly touch on CPK because that symposium is coming up very quickly. Is it open to anybody, or is it just for the practitioners?
Yeah, it's so the association itself is a practitioner training association. But what we try to do the symposium is make it so that you're not lost if you've never trained with us. You're going to learn about toxic chemicals in the beauty industry and how to help patients who like makeup and that sort of stuff, how to deal with that. I'm going to talk about the complex chronic illness cycle. We're going to have people talking all about frequency medicine and muscle testing. You know, it's this topics are spanned. So we do have a ticket option for non-practitioners, right? We have a student option and we have a non-practitioner option. So you don't have to be a doctor or an acupuncturist or any of that to come by any means. And so we've got that set up. The website for that, you can look at the tickets, you can see the dates, is cpksymposium.com on there. And you can find us on Facebook and on Instagram too. But you can see that. So it's in September 25th to 27th, just outside of Kansas City. We're in Overland Park, Kansas, at a nice hotel out there. And so we'll have speakers from all different industries, 2 full days of speakers. I know you guys will be out there with a great booth. People can come learn about the Nikki. A lot of us are out there using it. And guys, I'll tell you what, using the sleep setting, the Lyme sleep setting, my recovery scores on my Whoop are so much better.
Nice.
They're already pretty good. And then they were like up 10% consistently. One night I didn't charge it, forgot to wear it. I forgot to charge it, didn't wear it. They were back down, put it back on the next night, back up. It's been amazing. So love it. But a lot of our guys in the CPK and gals in the CPK Association are using the Nikki because your guys' concept melds perfectly. We're kinesiologists and frequency medicine folks. And that Nikki, we love it. And so Stephen, we're always jabbering with him and collaborating. And so we're excited to have you guys out there again.
Dr. Milton, who you've brought up before, he's actually going to be testing some programs. So I actually have to email him to you after this call. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on our podcast today, Dr. Hart. We really appreciate it. We will link your we'll link the CPK symposium in the show notes, and then we can also link where people can find you if they're curious. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we have forgotten?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed this talk. You guys are both so informed and great people. Thank you, Miriam and Nikki, for having me on. I'm glad you both were able to be here today, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation. And do you do distance work, or can you only work with people in person?
For the most, we can do our initial visit in person, but because we're specialized in the complex cases, we do an intensive setup where patients will come to stay 1 to 2 weeks initially, and then they can do virtual follow-ups after that. But when we're dealing with those complex cases, the bulk of it, we prefer to be in person.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Amazing. Such great information. Thank you for breaking it down for us and for people that are listening so they could actually digest what you're saying and not using a lot of medical speak. Like we were actually like, hey, thank you for giving us a meal that we can actually consume. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And also visit wearenikki.com to enter to win your own Nikki Wellness technology along with the Wellness Suite, valued at $598 USD. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The very first day that I wore the device, I slept through the night, which is amazing.
It looks like a little watch, but it's actually a frequency device. It's bioenergetic, so it has this little frequency light situation that goes into your arm, and it pretty much makes an immediate difference.
So there's like a sleep mode when I go mountain biking, I throw it on an energy booster. Once I'm done mountain biking, I actually switch it to the other mode they have is pain and relief.
When I'm in a stressful situation and I put it on, it helps me almost immediately. I immediately feel calmer, whether that's the frequency or me knowing that it's working or knowing that it's helping in addition to that.
One of my buddies was like, do not discount this. This is an amazing device. You've got to give it a chance.
It's got so many options. I'm just going to go over, it's like a menu that you can choose. It's so easy to use. You just click on what you like. For example, it's got travel, pain relief, energy boost, allergies.
I really, really love this device. In fact, I have 2 of them because when one is charging, I want to wear the other because I'm never without it.
It will never give you something where your body doesn't need and it is not natural. That's what I love about the device.
Put it on focus, maybe halfway through the day as I was losing focus. And within about 10 minutes of turning on, I feel like my brain is just like, I'm connected. Like, wow.
Trying all the frequencies and I love it. The one I'm using right now out on my walk is energy. It just energizes me. And I'm finding that I've got more stamina and more energy than I thought I would.
My Nikki helps me sleep better at night and helps me feel less stressed.
I really been enjoying it. So I've noticed my energy's been up. I've been sleeping better.
So the Nikki is one price, and then you pay for the frequency sets separately. So you can get the wellness one, which is awesome. I really do love the new Lyme frequencies so much. It's incredible.
Nikki Wellness Technology. Delivering frequency enhanced health. Wearenikki.com.
If
views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.